What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. I'm your host, EJ Holland. Apologies for the early show. I have to go somewhere with my wife, and she did not notify me until after our show yesterday. So we are here at 5 Eastern. So appreciate everybody that's joining today, getting off of work right now. Before we get into this week's questions, just want to remind you guys to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. We're obviously dropping a lot of content still with the staff on the road. The team guys have shows going on all the time with the Jim Harbaugh situation. So make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, and get alerts every time we drop a new video. Also, today's show is sponsored by My Perfect Franchise. Are you ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream? Looking for a side hustle while working your current job? Wanting to diversify, build wealth, or leave a legacy? Andy can help. That's Andy Luedecke. He's a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner, and he helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership. Andy Luedecke with myperfectfranchise.net is 100% an expert in the field. Again, contact him at myperfectfranchise.net, or you can phone him at 404-973-9901. Or if you want to use email, you can email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Again, that's myperfectfranchise.net. Make your American dream come true. We're all looking into My Perfect Franchise. We all want to have Chick-fil-A's and things of that nature. And, Libby's going to be back in Ohio soon. He's definitely wanting some Skyline chilies. So make things happen. Go get your own franchise. All right, let's get into the questions. And we're starting off with Tyson Smith. And he says, Kurt Campbell is everywhere. What do you think about him as a recruiter? I'm not going to lie, when Kurt Campbell was first hired, I was a little skeptical, right? Like, this is a guy that was the OC at Old Dominion, and before that didn't have a ton of recruiting experience. And even when Michigan initially bumped him up as the quarterbacks coach, I checked in with sources around Old Dominion. Obviously, that's where my wife goes and stuff. And they, praised him as a coach, but said he didn't get too involved on the recruiting trail. And ever since he took over as a full-time position coach at Michigan, he has been an unbelievable upgrade over Matt Weiss. It's clearly night and day. You're talking about a guy in Matt Weiss who loved analytics and absolutely hated recruiting. I mean, he was in stealth mode in the office and on the recruiting trail. You couldn't find him. But when it came to Kurt Campbell, I mean, this is a dude who just has a passion for recruiting. Like, you can see that he's literally everywhere, as Tyson Smith says in this question, man. Like, he's been across the country seeing 26 quarterbacks in California, in Florida. He's in Nashville today. He takes pride in being a high-level recruiter. And so even though he didn't have a ton of experience and he was a little bit of an unknown, he's proved himself as one of the better recruiters on this staff. And you see Zach scrolling through the 2026 quarterbacks he's offered. He already landed his 2025 guy in Carter Smith. So he's really able to focus in on that next class. And Kurt Campbell's been fantastic. I thought he did a great job of not doing the all your eggs in one basket approach that Matt Weiss was infamous for. And obviously he took Carter Smith and didn't just wait around for Bryce Underwood to make a decision, knowing that recruitment was potentially an NIL recruitment. So I think he did a great job of identifying Smith and also making sure that Smith was locked up right after he offered. Kurt Campbell was able to seal the deal here. And going back to that, like I said, I think it's the right decision, not doing the all your eggs in one basket for Bryce Underwood, because there's a chance that Carter Smith, if they had taken that approach, Carter Smith might not be in the class right now. They would have chased Bryce Underwood up to his decision, and he just would have spurned them for LSU. and maybe Carter Smith might have lost some interest or something, might have happened there. So I think he did a great job of saying, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and take Carter Smith right now, knowing we have to play from behind from an NIL standpoint with Bryce Underwood. So yeah, I've been a big fan of Kirk Campbell. The one thing I would love to see Michigan do with Campbell is give him more areas. Like, he already has his 25 guy. It's great that he's focusing in on some of the 2026 signal callers, but give him more assigned areas. Like, let this guy loose in areas where you don't have a lot of ties on staff. Get him out there, get him in front of people. I mean, he's a really likable guy. Not only that, obviously the recruits like him, but the high school coaches, the trainers, the 7-on-7 coaches, got people that are around these recruitments that other staff members don't necessarily connect with. Kirk Campbell does. That's one of the most impressive things about Campbell, is the fact that he's been able to connect with everybody in a recruitment, not just the kid or the parents, but the 7-on-7 coaches, the mentors, the trainers. There's a lot that goes into specific recruitments. And again, Campbell's been able to really establish those relationships and again, prove himself as one of the top recruiters on staff. So, I mean, A+, I have been super surprised and excited by the job that Kirk Campbell has done at Michigan. Tyson is back with another one. He says, Michigan is seeing a lot of wide receivers. Who is the best one? My personal favorite and there are a lot of great wide receivers out there. Bellamy was in Houston yesterday seeing Andrew Marsh. Dallas, my hometown, obviously has a pair of really good wide receivers that Michigan's after in Taz Williams and Khalil Lockett. I mean, there's Talon Taylor in Chicagoland, who is, fantastic. But my number one wide receiver on Michigan's recruiting board, and Zach already has it pulled up, he already knows, my number one wide receiver on Michigan's recruiting board is Quincy Porter. I absolutely love Quincy Porter. 6'3", 6'4", 180 pounds. I mean, he has the size, the length, and he's not just a big body. Obviously, Michigan needs a big body this cycle. They need a true outside presence. But Quincy Porter is more than that. He can stretch the field and get vertical. He runs routes like a small guy. When I saw him this year against Iona Prep, which is a really good, prep school in the Northeast, Porter tore them apart, man. 4 touchdowns. And he is that big body too. He uses his size really well in the red zone. He had a jump ball win for a touchdown. I think Quincy Porter is underrated by some of the sites. He's ranked super high. He's on the cusp of 5-star status. But I think he's a clear 5-star. He should be a top 25 prospect in the country, no question. Now, I haven't really seen Porter play 7-on-7 or do any camps. Again, I got to see him in game this year. So maybe that's what people are missing. Maybe they haven't had those in-person evaluations. It doesn't seem like many national guys have seen Porter live, but I mean, you can just see it. I mean, he looks like Terrell Owens here, just running off to the races. I mean, again, the speed with that size is absolutely special. So again, big fan of Quincy Porter. I think he's a must land for Michigan next cycle. And he did visit for the barbecue at the Big House. The thing with these Northeast kids is they have a lot of Saturday games. You see these clips are from a Saturday day game. So they don't get to visit a lot of schools in the fall. So I think it's imperative for Michigan to be able to get them back on campus at some point this offseason. Obviously, they haven't hosted guys here in January, but if they can get them in for that last weekend or for the first weekend in February, or sometime in late March or April, whenever the next contact period is, I think he's a guy that's an absolute must to get on campus. Next one and last one from Tyson Smith. He says, you and Libby are on an island. You need a quarterback recruit to complete a pass to a wide receiver recruit to get off the island. Who do you go with? All right, that's an interesting question. I think Libby knows my answer. If I need a receiver to catch a pass, He didn't specify the yardage. So if I need a receiver to catch a 3-yard pass, I'm going with Channing Goodwin. Michigan wide receiver signee Channing Goodwin has some of the best hands in the country in the 2024 class. He might not be super explosive. He might not be the biggest guy. He might not be an amazing athlete, but he's a precise route runner and he moves the chains and he catches everything in his vicinity. And if I need a quarterback to throw in the ball, I'm just going to give him Jaden Davis because they already have that chemistry. They're teammates. And even though, I've gotten criticism for my take on Jaden Davis, he's very accurate, short to intermediate. And I just need Jaden Davis to loft that ball nicely into Channing Goodwin for a 3-yard gain, which I 100% would feel confident in them connecting for. So Jaden Davis to Channing Goodwin is the easy answer. Me and Libby are definitely getting off the island, though I'm not sure Libby would want to leave the island. He likes the heat and the sand. Next up is we actually had a question on the website. I think they didn't put it on the YouTube comments. They accidentally put it in the thread, but we wanted to get this question answered anyway. And it's from Zach702, and he says, thoughts on the Buckeye buy? I'm sure you covered some of those recruits and know you liked Air Nolan and Julian Sayin. Yeah, it's crazy seeing Ohio State spend as much money as they have. I mean, they've gone all in on NIL, and that's pretty apparent with landing guys like Julian Sayin and Caleb Downs. I mean, they're rolling on the recruiting trail right now. I think Ohio State's going to be really scary heading into Columbus next season. I mean, Michigan's obviously owned them the last few years, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, obviously the talent's there, but how they come along from a chemistry standpoint will really be interesting. But I mean, overall thoughts is it's a little scary if you're Michigan looking at that amount of talent, but it's not like Michigan hasn't beaten Ohio State with less. I mean, Ohio State has top 5 recruiting classes every year, and Michigan's been able to beat them the last 3 years in a row. So I'm interested to see if Ryan Day can put it all together, or if they just lack chemistry and they're just soft and they collapse. I mean, Texas A&M has done I guess an Aggie buy, and it always collapses. So I guess we'll have to wait and see till the fall. But on paper, it looks great. Let's go to Ralph Melvin. And he says, I don't like the recruiting class we just signed. No big time receivers and no big time corners. The recruiting class overall isn't exciting in terms of, okay, Michigan's coming off of these college football playoff appearances, and they should be landing top 5, top 10 recruiting classes. But I do think you have some really intriguing pieces, including the guy on the screen, Josiah Edmond. I mean, he's been one of the biggest risers in the rankings, a really high upside athlete that, made plays on both sides of the ball at the high school level, as you see here, with him being a wide receiver. But yeah, I had a chance to see Josiah at the All-American Bowl in San Antonio, and he was one of the top performers. He was named the top performer by every recruiting service in attendance. I mean, he's still raw from a technical standpoint, but he's long, he's physical, he has the height, he has the speed as well. With him, it's all about getting the footwork right, getting the technique right. But, I think that some sites now even have Josiah Edmond ranked ahead of Bryce West. And Zach will vouch for me because I told him months and months ago that I thought Bryce West was a little overrated. And now it seems like Josiah Edmond has passed him up here. Josiah is longer, a better athlete. So I'm really excited to see what he becomes under Steve Klingskel's coaching. Now, I wouldn't put him ahead of Aaron Scott and go crazy, but I do think he's one of the better corners nationally this cycle. In terms of wide receivers, yeah, I mean, you have guys that are, like Channing Goodwin, he's a consistent weapon. Amarion Stewart's kind of a Samaj Morgan type. He brings plenty of versatility. He's a guy that can be a kick returner, punt returner as well. He can split outside if you need him to. But I think with Goodwin and Stewart, they're more slot type receivers. Michigan, again, needs that true outside presence. So whether it's, Quincy Porter or a guy like Corey Sims out of St. Louis that Bellamy saw last week. They need a true outside guy. But yeah, I agree. I think they need some more explosive weapons in general. Guys like Kalik Lockett, who's kind of that 6'1", 170 type. They need prospects like that too, that are just bring a different element to the offense. Talon Taylor, out of Chicagoland as well. So yeah, I agree. The receiver recruiting has been a bit disappointing, but we talked about that yesterday with Libby. It's like, it's tough if you're Ron Bellamy because you're selling an offense that doesn't pass the ball a ton. And you're also, you're also recruiting for a team that doesn't play NIL, and wide receivers are getting a ton of NIL offers. So landing a big time wide receiver is absolutely critical in 2025. Landing a big time corner is also critical, especially after you lost out on Chris Ewald. Again, I like Josiah Edmond, as an upside athlete, but Jeremiah Lowe, I think, was a bit of a reach take. And then, last cycle's corners weren't amazing. You already saw Cameron Calhoun transfer out. I mean, obviously, I like Jair Hill as well, but I think Hill and Edmond, and that's pretty much it for corner over the last two cycles. It's a little shaky. I think Klink and Bellamy definitely need to have big cycles in 2025. Dennis Tytech says, go get David Sanders. So Sharon Moore was in Charlotte yesterday, seeing 5-star offensive tackle David Sanders. So I guess I'll ask the question for Dennis. Does Michigan have a legitimate shot here? I'm going to say no right now. I don't think Michigan is a top contender. I think they're in the mix. Obviously, there are a lot of ties here. He's a teammate of signees Channing Goodwin and Jaden Davis. He plays along the offensive line for Jonathan Goodwin, ex-Wolverine, who is the offensive line coach and Channing's dad. But he is the offensive line coach at Providence Day. So, yeah, the ties are there. He visited for the barbecue at the Big House, so he's been on campus. Unfortunately for Michigan, he wasn't able to make it back in the fall. Sharon has a lot to pitch, the Joe Moore Awards in recent years, and just the development along the offensive line has to be impressive to Sanders. But at the end of the day, I think he probably wants to head south. You see Georgia, Clemson, Alabama are considered the leaders on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. And I would agree. I mean, landing the number 2 overall recruit in the country, despite those ties, is going to be a tall task for Sharon Moore. But David Sanders is legit. It would be great to see Michigan actually establish itself as a true player. Let's go down to Go Blue 81. He says, what are our chances with Carter Lowe and Dorian Brew since he pushed back his commitment? With Carter Lowe, I believe he's still set to decide this weekend, and I don't think Michigan has much of a chance here. He did visit a few times. He has a great relationship with Sharon Moore, but I do think that Ohio State is the team to beat. I put in a prediction in favor of the Buckeyes for Carter Lowe. In terms of Dorian Brew, we talked about it yesterday. I think Michigan absolutely needed him to push his decision date back, which he did. I still think he's going to be tough to pull from Ohio State, given that his mother attended the school and he's been there a million times. But he has visited Michigan a couple of times. He has a great relationship with Steve Clinkscale. I think if there's anybody that can move the needle there, it's Clinkscale. You have the opportunity to come in and get early playing time at Michigan as well, whereas Ohio State is kind of loaded up the corner room. And you see, we're talking about Brew, who's a top 30 player nationally. And I think that's your pitch is, hey, if you're Steve Clinkscale, I'm committed to being here. I've developed guys. I developed your former classmate, Rod Moore, or had a hand in that. And, he's turned around and has been a Buckeye killer. And you have a chance to be to create your own legacy, and you have a chance to come in and play right away. Whereas, Ohio State, again, the cupboard is pretty full. So still an uphill battle, but, I think there's a chance with Brew. With Lowe making his decision now, I don't think there's much of a chance there. Jack O'Hara says, what offensive tackle and defensive tackle recruit should we be feeling good about right now? So I had this discussion with Zach yesterday, and I said, I don't know who the tackles are going to be in this class. There are a lot of interior offensive line options, whether it's Avery Gatch or Rowan Byrne or Michael Carroll or Caden Strayhorn. Like the list just goes on and on for interior guys. Logan Powell. Like there are so many guys that can be guards and centers, but who's going to be an actual tackle this class? I think, in a pinch, Avery Gatch could split out to right tackle. I think that, from talking to Zach yesterday, he mentioned John Mills as a potential tackle. But you look at Avery Gatch, he's listed as an interior guy. I mean, all these guys are more interior guys. So I think during this contact period and into the spring evaluation period, it's critical for Sharon Moore to expand the tackle board, especially, I think a big loss early on was having Will Black commit to Notre Dame. And some other tackles on the board, Jack Lange is leaning to Notre Dame. Owen Strabig is considered a Notre Dame-Wisconsin battle. Matty Augustine was another guy high on the board that seems to be leaning towards Notre Dame and just had a teammate committed there. So it seems like the Irish, as much as I hate to say it, are out in front of Michigan when it comes to tackle prospects. And obviously you're seeing Carter Lowe, potentially commit to Ohio State soon. You are in the mix with David Sanders, but definitely on the outside looking in. So tackle is definitely something we're monitoring closely. And then defensive tackles, I mean, if you're talking about, three techniques, there are several guys that Michigan's in the mix with. Cole Breeler is one that Michigan just saw here recently. I think he would be good to pair with Bobby Kenko, who is already committed and is also more of a three technique. In terms of actual nose recruits, I think they're in a good spot with Dylan Battle out of Texas. I think that they're creating some movement with Bryce Jenkins out of the DMV. But I think the defensive line board is kind of wait and see right now, especially, with some uncertainty around Jesse Minter. He plays a big role in helping Elston evaluate guys. I mean, they were out on the road together the last couple of days in Chicagoland and Indiana. So kind of wait and see with offensive tackle and defensive tackle, or at least nose prospects. Go Blue 81 says, are we going to get a second quarterback in this class, and will that affect Carter Smith? So Carter has told me that he wouldn't mind a second quarterback commit. So I believe him too. It seems like he's pretty locked in with Michigan. I don't think he's saying that just to say it for the media. I actually think he's genuine with that comment. But, Michigan I wouldn't rule it out. There was a report linking Michigan to five-star Juju Lewis last week. And yesterday I posted on the Wolverine that Kirk Campbell was in Georgia and did not stop by to see him. I don't think there's going to be much there. They've kind of stuck around with Husan Longstreet. Zach Libby reported that Longstreet is expecting Campbell to stop by. If there is another quarterback in 2025, I think Longstreet would be the guy. Michigan is still the favorite on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. He visited last summer. He had a chance to work out in front of Campbell, and I think he would be a good compliment to Carter Smith. He's a really exciting player as well, high upside, kind of just entertaining. He can run. He can make some really great off-platform throws. I think he needs to polish up just like Smith does as a pure passer, but he's an exciting one too. So if I had to say that if there was a favorite for there to be a second 25 quarterback, it would be Longstreet. Let's go down to Mike Wallace, and he says, Michigan better get the ball rolling with recruiting. I hope Ono does something with NIL. What are the coaches waiting on? Yeah, I don't think it's really the coaches. I mean, I think the coaches want to have, I don't think the coaches want to be handicapped on the recruiting trail by NIL. So I do think that, it's more maybe administration and collective. Let's go to Go Blue 81. And he says, will what OSU is doing motivate them to get their NIL in line? I never thought it would take us this long to get it right. I don't think so, man. I don't think they're going to look at Ohio State buying all these guys and be like, yeah, we have to go all in on pay for play. I think it's just about getting people on the same page, obviously figuring out the Jim Harbaugh situation first and foremost before you can even move into NIL. But it's not like Harbaugh hasn't been an advocate for the base salary model. He has. So they just, they're moving at a snail's pace. Let's go to Go Blue 81 again. And he says, how are we looking with Jalen Williams and Nathaniel Marshall? I think Michigan is on top for Jalen Williams. This is a kid that grew up really loving Michigan. He's been to campus multiple times. He had a great, FaceTime with Jesse Minter and Mike Elston earlier this week when they stopped by his school. And I mean, he just fits the defensive scheme as well as that bigger edge guy. I actually, Jalen Williams is ranked as a industry 4-star. On3 has him as a 3-star, which is terrible. Nathaniel Marshall is ranked as a top 100 kid. I saw both of them the same weekend. I was in Chicago in the fall, and I like Jalen Williams better than I do Nathaniel Marshall. I would have Jalen Williams ranked higher. I think Michigan's trending in the right direction for him. With Nathaniel Marshall, Michigan's definitely up there. They're in the mix, but I think Notre Dame probably has the lead in that recruitment, and some NIL schools have gotten involved with Marshall as well. I know Miami was out to see him, so interested to see how that recruitment turns out. But I would say Michigan has a better shot with Jalen. And Mike Wallace says that wide receiver coach needs at least 3 or 4 wideouts and at least 2 elite outside. They need to fire him if he can't recruit. So the wide receivers coach is Ron Bellamy, and I do not agree that they need to fire Ron Bellamy. Like I said before and on yesterday's show, it doesn't matter if the world's greatest recruiter was the wide receivers coach at Michigan, because you're trying to sell an offense that isn't pass happy, one. And then more importantly, you don't have NIL to sell. And when you're a high-level wide receiver, when you're an elite receiver, top 100, top 200, you're going to command top dollars. That is a premium position. So it has to be excruciatingly painful for Ron Bellamy to try to recruit these top 100 kids because he has 2 hands tied behind his back. He doesn't have a pass-happy offense to sell, and he doesn't have NIL to sell. So it's going to be tough to land high-level prospects. I think Ron Bellamy puts in a ton of effort on the recruiting trail. I think he's doing everything he can. It's really not his fault. Let's go down to David, and I think this is our last question. And he says, is Harbaugh leaving a deal breaker for Gatlin Bair? So I actually posted an insider's piece earlier this week on the Wolverine, which, by the way, if you're not a subscriber to the Wolverine.com, you can subscribe today for $1 for 1 month. Took a deep dive into Ron Bellamy's visit with Gatlin Bair. And that's definitely something I've asked Gatlin in the past earlier this month when I spent time with him in San Antonio. And also his coach and mentor, Cameron Anderson, was kind enough to give me an interview after the Ron Bellamy visit. And, I asked them both this question. And I think Bair is a little hesitant, or would be a little hesitant if Harbaugh did leave to the NFL, but he has a really good relationship with Bellamy, and he has a really good relationship with Sharon Moore. In fact, the relationship with Sharon Moore has really picked up over the last few months. Michigan has made it a point to get him more and more involved. So I believe there's a comfort level there with Sharon. And I think from Cameron Anderson's side, who again is the head coach at Burley and also his mentor, from Cameron Anderson's side, he's been able to see Colson Loveland, who he coached at the high school level, really blossom while Sharon Moore has been the offensive coordinator. So I think that helps as well. It certainly would be tougher for Michigan to land Bair without Harbaugh, but I think if Michigan quickly moves to Sharon Moore, Bair would realize that, hey, there's going to be stability here. Sharon Moore is definitely going to be on campus after I come back from my mission in 2026. Now, with all of that said, I still think Oregon is going to be tough to beat here as well. Dan Lanning has made it very, very clear in the public eye that he is staying at Oregon. He had that whole video after the Alabama rumors. So that's definitely appealing to Bair as well. I think it's going down to the wire. I know the On3 recruiting prediction machine heavily favors Michigan, but I think this is a very, very close battle with Oregon down the stretch. We had a few more questions come in late, so let's just get to them super fast before we get out of here. If Harbaugh leaves, do you think Moore becomes head? And if Moore becomes head coach, do you think he opens up the offense up to attract more wide receivers? I'm not sure, man. I mean, I think that Sharon Moore might, put in some of his own offensive philosophies. Maybe they get a little bit more creative with the pass game, but at the same time, who's going to be throwing the passes? Like, look at the quarterback room. You have Jaden Davis as a true freshman. You definitely don't want to throw him into the fire. You have Jaden Denegal, who Michigan was the only Power 5 school that was really on him at the time he committed and has had very limited action. You have Alex Orji, who's gotten some time, but never really throws when he's in. Who's going to throw the ball? How are you going to open up the offense if you don't have the quarterback? So I think getting a quarterback out of the portal first will tell us a lot of things in terms of what the offense would look like next year. Coach Jake WCB says, missed this show. Wanted your opinion on Caleb Cunningham, the Mississippi kid. Well, you stuck in your question just in time. Michigan offered 5-star wide receiver Caleb Cunningham out of Mississippi earlier this week in the 2025 recruiting class. With Michigan not having NIL and, again, not having a pass-happy offense, I think Cunningham is an extreme long shot. Obviously, he's a fantastic player. He's a 5-star for a reason, but I think it's going to be tough for Michigan to truly get in the mix there. Thomas Ackerman says, are there any recruits we're on that are talented enough that may have more leeway when it comes to culture aspect, or are culture and fit a priority over ability no matter what? I think Michigan looks for a good balance. I mean, if they feel like a guy is talented enough and they have a bit of character concerns, they'll still push for him. But I think Michigan looks for a specific type of kid that would fit into the culture, and that's why Michigan has been able to make the college football playoff and win a national championship with more top 15 type of classes, because they found guys like JJ McCarthy and Junior Colson and Zach Zinner and Donovan Edwards that really, are great kids off the field, great players on the field, take pride in being a Michigan Wolverine, and they look for some of those same traits when they're out recruiting. So I think Michigan does a good job of identifying, Michigan type of kids, and that leads to the culture that they've built and the turnaround that they've had. All right, guys, that was the last question. Appreciate you guys for joining today's show. And like the banner says, thank you to our sponsor, My Perfect Franchise. Also, like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, and head over to thewolverine.com. We are on Jim Harbaugh watch still. Get the latest over there for $1 for 1 month, as well as the latest reports on Michigan staff hitting the road. Thank you guys, and we'll see y'all next week.